Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engel here for, not TGI Sports Talk, really still National Streaming Sports. We'll be figuring that out as we go along. I want to welcome you to the second week of Yak and Keith's Weekend Playbook. Last week went pretty well. Let me kill this music. And we got a lot to talk about today, baseball-wise, Wimbledon-wise, a little bit of football, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of everything. Jack, how was your holiday weekend? Jack.
Hey, good. Lots of sports, watching the Yankee-Mets Subway Series, the hot dog eating contest. And before you know it, we'll be getting ready for the football season, watching tennis, too, at Wimbledon.
Yeah, we didn't mention real quick. I'll mention, I guess, at the top here that, and I got to give some thank yous in a second. We didn't mention the earlier before we were talking about things to chat about. Joey Chestnut regains his championship. We talked about the contest on Friday, but we didn't give the results. So congratulations, Joey Chestnut.
No athlete dominates his sport, if you want to call it a sport, or his whatever you want to call it, the way Joey Chestnut does. I mean, you could argue if it's a sport, then he's the most dominant athlete of all time, the greatest of all time, because he not only wins, he obliterates the competition. I mean, just think of this. The amount of hot dogs he wins by, Keith, you and I could sit down and we couldn't finish it in a day, I don't think. Like, what, 25 hot dogs? 25 hot dogs he wins by. I got an 8-pack of hot dogs on the July 4th holiday. I had to finish them with my wife over 3 days.
Hang on one second. I got myself with a.
You're thinking of what you're going to eat for dinner tonight because I mentioned the hot dogs. So.
You know, after watching that a little bit, I don't really want a hot dog for a while. I don't know. It's I love hot dogs too. But anyway. Listen, I want to welcome, thank you everybody watching today on Facebook, YouTube. We're having trouble. Guys, if you go to my TGI Sports Talk page and you don't see it in the timeline, just click on my profile picture. You can see where it says live there. For some reason, Facebook doesn't want to start that stream, and I have to share it later. I was trying to share it now, and I was getting all kinds of feedback, so I was going crazy.
But I give you a lot of credit, Keith, for, running the course with this, because old timers like ourselves, and I'm a little more of an old timer than you, not by a great deal, but not tech savvy.
Yeah, well,
not tech savvy, and I come across my brethren. I got tongue tied from my era, and we're usually not tech savvy and stuff like that. We like the old fashioned, way. Writing letters, we're up to the times we email, we text, we caught up with that, but all the other stuff, credit to you, Keith, for working.
We couldn't do the show in an hour if we were writing letters, for crying out loud. So, anyway, Facebook viewers, thank you. Twitter, YouTube, we're live on all those. National Streaming Sports, YouTube, and TGI Sports Talk. Quick shout out to all the groups, obviously John Gonzalez and the Sports Authorities, Greg Rawlings at America's Pastime, the Love of Baseball, the Bottom Line Sports, Let's Talk Sports, and Ken Krause at Golf Bud Sports of all sorts. Ralph Williams from RW Media does a great job out there. He just was in Pittsburgh, moved to Ocean City, Maryland, but still well embedded in Pittsburgh sports and a nationwide footprint thanks to him. And thumbs up to DDH and Mac McGrath, who we know are former colleagues. Both of them were my former colleagues anyway. One was yours, and we know they're keeping us on a straight and narrow here. So, Jack, lots to talk about. As I said, we'll start with Mets and Yankees. Mets fairly dominant in some ugly baseball games in the first two games anyway. Yesterday, I thought was a better played game. Max Fried stops another Yankee losing streak. He's looking like Ron Guidry circa 1978 right now. He keeps winning after losing streaks. Some up and downs for the Yankees. The bullpen was not very good, but Devin Williams had a good ninth inning for a change. Takeaways from this series and going forward. Listen, both these teams, I know we talk about it's a long season, but the Yankees are 14-19 since June 1st. The Mets 16-17, a little bit better. That's a pretty good sample size, and there's some significant things to address, I think, on both teams, but doesn't mean they won't make the playoffs because so many wild cards. What are your thoughts on this series? This was a huge win for the Yankees yesterday, I think. What are your thoughts?
It was a huge win when the Yankees went up 5-0, and then the Mets are starting to come back. I'm thinking of the headlines today, how ugly it's going to be for Yankee fans, the discontent, losing a seventh game in a row, getting swept 2 series in a row by the Blue Jays, and then the Mets, about the 2 worst teams that you could get swept against, and especially with your ace on the mound with a 5-0 lead to let the game get away. But you've been critical of the way, Keith, the way the Yankee team has been put together. You're saying, well, they're flawed in base running, flawed in defense. Defense won them the game yesterday. 2 great double plays. Bellinger in left field, who Brian Cashman acquired. Paul Goldschmidt turning a great double play at first base, who Brian Cashman acquired. So they are built defensively to an extent. There are some holes there. Look, Juan Dominguez has to play. He had an off game. His glove is so. He's got to get better, but he's young. You got to work with him, but certainly he's a player you want to see develop and move forward with. Aaron Judge, excellent right fielder. Todd Grisham over there. He had a reputation as an elite defender, and he hasn't shown that, but he's okay. Yeah. But he's okay there. And Austin Wells isn't bad. And, and when you move Chaz Chisholm to second base, that's his natural position. Let's see how it works out over there. And Pedraza's a really good defensive third baseman, but he can't hit, so he doesn't play. So that's basically what it comes. And Anthony Volpe's just got to straighten out, basically. The potential's there for him to be a good, defender. But you look at the Mets on their side. No one talks about that. Pete Alonso has his issues at first base. Juan Soto makes some really nice plays now and then, but he makes some plays that are less than desirable too.
He's bad.
And he's especially going to have some issues as he gets older, as the years go along, because at this point, Soto's going to be about as good a right field as he's ever going to become. And for we know Soto's ultimately going to be a first baseman. Alonso won't be there forever. He got his 15-year deal with the Mets, meaning he's going to be there a lot of years with the Mets unless he opts out after his 5th year. But by that time, he'll be age 31. Who knows what the mindset of the Mets and Soto's going to be. Maybe Soto would have led the Mets to a couple of World Series wins. He's going to be an icon, and he could redo his contract yet again. But chances are Soto isn't going to opt out, and it's going to take the last 10 years.
Well, I got a couple comments here. I'm going to say a couple good mornings before I do. Brian, my favorite moniker of all time, I think, one ass cheek, 3 toes. Brian, our good friend with National Streaming Sports. Danny Fuller out in L.A. up early this morning. Good morning, Danny. Rick Sherlock out in Amsterdam, New York. And there's and Danny did say, again, I'll get into this in a second, but all the teams have issues. Just to touch on a couple things with the Mets that you mentioned. Soto is going to end up as a DH is where he's going to end up. He's not going to end up a good enough defensive first baseman. and he makes a few plays here and there, but the plays he doesn't make more than makes up for the ones he does. Like I'll go all the way back to the World Series last year, and one of the reasons the Dodgers won that series or dominated that series, if you want to use that word, was defensive play in the outfield, holding the Yankees to not getting the extra base hit. If you watch who was playing right, Mookie Betts was playing right field, I believe, in that series, and was playing tremendous defense, and you saw the difference in the two teams and what difference defense makes. I guess the Mets' biggest problem right now, to me, Diaz has pitched well in relief. His up and down career kind of continues, which relievers tend to do. I still worry about the depth of the starting pitching. Senga's coming back this week, I believe. That'll be a big lift because he's pitched well. Holmes has pitched better than I thought he would as a starter, and so is Peterson. So they've had some surprises, so they've got to keep that up in the second half. And I think a big deal, Lindor's slumped recently. I think he'll come back. I think he gets a well-deserved all-star nod here, which we'll talk about in a second. The biggest thing I think for the Mets offense is they need to get third base straightened out. And Vientos he's been hurt a lot, but even before he was hurt, he was not hitting particularly well. I think they need Mark Vientos to become a part of that, an instrument of that lineup and help some protection with Alonso and whatnot.
Well, Vientos has been disappointing this year. You mentioned Clay Holmes, that he's pitched well. But we've seen that before with the Yankees. He always gives you a great couple of months, and then he fades.
Yeah.
And then he fades. I mean, he doesn't keep it going for the whole season. He made a couple of all-star teams because he gets off to a great start during the season. And Jeff McNeil has waged a little bit of a comeback. His numbers might not look spectacular, but he's been steady for the Mets. He's been good for the Mets. I think a year from now, the Mets have an opt-out where they can either pay him, and I'm approximating about $16 million a year, or they could buy him out for $2 million. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out, what decision the Mets are going to make in that regard. But you mentioned Soto eventually being a career DH, but at what point? He's got 14 years left on his deal after this one. Let's say hypothetically 6-7 years from now, he's a full-time DH. You mean to tell me they're going to just DH him the whole time? We've seen that with the Yankees, with Giancarlo Stanton. Having a full-time DH is an albatross, unless that DH is so great like David Ortiz was. If he's as great as David Ortiz was, or Edgar Martinez, you can live with a full-time DH like that because the guy is such a great hitter. But if a guy's just a okay hitter or a streakier hitter, a so-so, he hampers the lineup, and that's what you have now with Giancarlo Stanton. The Yankees are locked into Stanton for something like 3 more years. They're paying him too much money to just get rid of him. Plus, Stanton could be very productive. If he gets he's streaky. When he's streaky, he's awesome. He's awesome. And I'm going to tell you something. You know how you could judge a player's value to an extent? When he comes back at the end of his career, how the fans greet him. And if Stanton's career ended today, and he came back in a couple of years at an old-timers day, they would give him a big ovation. Meaning, on balance, the Yankee fans feel, Giancarlo's been okay. He hasn't been a flop to us. But if the Yankees could get out of that contract now, they would move on from it.
Yeah, we've had this debate a couple of times. I'm the Yankees. I'm not the Royals. I just eat the money and go make it.
Don't eat the money, Keith. You can't keep eating the money.
It's not you and me eating the money.
You can't, you got to keep up with the times. You can't keep thinking, well, the Yankees' mission statement is the World Series and nothing. And Max said it best. Maybe said it to me off the air responding to you. He says that's every team's mission statement to win the World Series.
Oh, that's true.
The Yankees. But with the Mets, it's an interesting question, Keith. if someone threw it at you, and I might put it on the debate show, I don't want it to be too regional, the debate show necessarily. Who's more likely to win a World Series first, the Yankees or the Mets? And the Mets, if you have a quick look at it, you might say they're more likely. They got a great owner in Steve Cohen, who seems willing to spend anything. But the Mets have something in their way that the Yankees don't. And that's the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah.
Someone has got to take down the Dodgers, who are the best team in baseball. And the Yankees have a clearer path to the World Series, even if the Mets might be a little better team at this point.
Well, just with their challenges, the entire National League is better than the American League as a whole. That's why the Yankees, I think, can afford to limp their way into the playoffs more than the Mets can, because there are better teams depth-wise, I think.
The teams, the Mets would have to get by the Phillies as well, who are, a top-of-the-line team. And the Yankees would have to get by a team like the Detroit Tigers. So it would be a tough team to get by, but certainly not as hard as, the LA Dodgers would be. And it's easy to forget. The Mets came within 2 games of going to the World Series last year. But it's so hard to get back to where you were before. But something about this Dodger team, they're so stacked, Keith. Come playoff time, it's going to be hard to unseat those guys if they're ready and they're in form. But when you mention the way the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series, I got to remind you, the Yankees very easily, and underline the word easily, could have been up 3-2 with a great chance of winning the series.
I know.
They came 1 out away from winning in Game 1. Just 1 more out. If they got that last out, they win Game 1. And the game they lost in Game 5, they're up 5-0. They had 3 miscues in a row. Judge dropping an easy fly ball, and that was a fluke. That was a complete fluke.
Yeah.
Anthony Volpe, a throw a little offline to third base, but that was a tough play. That was a little bit bang, bang, but a good throw gets the out. And Garrett Cole having the mental lapse forgetting to cover first base. If the Yankees did one of those 3 things in that inning, just one of the 3, they exit the inning with a 5-0 lead instead of it being 5-5, so they win that game. And imagine the Yankees go back to LA up 3-2. And they have a good chance in that scenario.
I can imagine anything. But the problem is, as I said, I said long before that 5th game, fundamental baseball escapes the Yankees at crucial times, and it did there, and it cost them maybe the series.
No, Keith, don't put down that's the Yankee style of play. Judge dropping that little fly ball, that's not fundamental. Garrett Cole not covering first base is fundamentals 100%. You got to remember, 100%. But look who we're talking about. We're talking about a future Hall of Famer. I mean, he was beat up that round. He had the mental lapse. You can't drill that in and teach a guy those fundamentals. At this point.
What?
No, we're not with a Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole knows he has to cover first base. He knows he messed up. He's been covering first base like that his whole career. He knows it from when he was in Little League, whatever. Well, and he had a mental lapses happen once in a while. I want to make a little comment with the Yankee-Met game yesterday. For some reason, it escapes me who the leadoff batter was for the Mets in the 9th inning.
The 9th inning, I didn't see that.
Right, 9th inning, but Carlos Mendoza gets thrown out of the game because there were 2 pitches called strikes. And the batter and the Met manager, Carlos Mendoza, were clearly livid because both pitches were out of the strike zone. They had every right to be furious.
Yeah.
2 bad calls by the home plate umpire. And it was bad news. And sometimes I wonder, how can managers tell from the dugout whether it's a ball or strike? But Carlos Mendoza was clearly furious. He could tell. And I'm even thinking like, what? Yeah, it favored the Yankees. And Paul O'Neill, I watched the Yankee channel instead of the Met one. He's even saying it's out of the strike zone. They're showing the replay.
Listen, let me go through a couple of things, just a couple of these. I want to say good morning to Linda. I saw Linda McGrath here. Where'd you go, Linda?
Good morning, Linda.
You disappeared on me, Linda. There you are. Good morning. She loves the new show. And listen, this isn't going to replace Mac and Jack ever, but, Jack and I are going to put our own spin on things.
Well, Linda likes the way I said when I talked with Mac, he put you down with the mission statement. Like it's all teams' mission statement, Mac would say.
That's when she spoke. Good morning, Sonia. Thank you for sharing the show.
Hey, Sonia. How you doing?
Danny's right.
Danny's in L.A., so I mentioned the Dodgers there. But listen, I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series this year. I mean, they're the clear favorites. In baseball, you usually won't have a clear favorite. But, we'll see with the Dodgers. If the Dodgers don't win at least one more World Series in the next few years, wow, that would surprise me. What a flop. Because, if they win one more, if they at least go back-to-back and then they don't win one for the next 20 years, you look back, well, at least they won 2 in a row. You don't want to minimize that, but they wouldn't have a place in history necessarily. The last back-to-back series winners with the Blue Jays, right, Keith?
90s. 91, 92 maybe. Yeah. That might be it. That's hard to believe.
And they're not a historical team.
No, it's hard to do. I mean, probably the best team that didn't it's 40 years ago almost. The A's only won one World Series in that great stretch.
The A's went to 3 in a row.
1-1.
And they only won one, the middle. The same thing with those Baltimore Oriole teams, 69 to 71. They only won one World Series, the one in 1970. So you got to kind of put the World Series wins together. Like, wait, what am I saying with the Blue Jays 92? The Yankees, of course. I'm not counting the Yankees.
Oh, yeah, that's a great.
I mean, I was thinking outside the box, not counting the Yankees.
Gotcha.
That was on my mind. And Yankees won 3 in a row. Had they won 4 in a row, they would have, those Yankee teams are considered kind of dynasty in the era. They went to
5. 4 to 5 is a dynasty. That's
right. They went to 6 World Series in 8 years. So that was like a great, run that they had.
And by the way, I do like, Rick, thank you for pointing out that Dr. Sim often agrees on my opinions about Aaron Boone. Thank you so much for that comment.
Dr. Sim, keep in mind, wanted to let Aaron Judge walk, him and Mac, because they wouldn't accept Brian Cashman's offer. That would have been a terrible offer for Judge to accept. It wasn't an unfair offer. They were offering Judge $30 million a year, and I'm thinking, wait, Judge could do a lot better than this. If he has just merely a good year, he'll get that when his contract expires. And not a good year for Judge, a good year for someone else's measure. And Judge smartly didn't sign the contract, and Yankees blew it in that negotiation. They could have gotten Judge for a lot less, but they really lowballed him.
For sure. And in fairness to Aaron Boone and my opinions about Aaron Boone, I don't want to just fire him for firing's sake. If I don't have a better option, similar to the Tom Thibodeau situation, I'm not firing the guy. So, again, I don't...
Well, let me get this straight. I can't let this go. They go to the World Series last year. You would actually fire him after going to the World Series.
No, I don't think I think then I got to give him a pass then, but there's been
you would fire him in season now. Had they lost yesterday's game, you would have fired Aaron Boone or what?
No, quite frankly, I've said this this year that I think Aaron Boone has done one of his better managerial jobs this year, up until the recent struggles they've had. I think Aaron Boone has done some of his best stretch of managing because of injuries and the Garrett Cole situation, the whole pitching staff situation. I think he's done a pretty good job. He still, relies on his cue cards too much instead of game, but all managers do that. And
I think he has to do that to an extent. I think he believes in that, number one. He really does. Number two, if you get a manager who's not heavily into analytics, he doesn't have a chance to manage the Yankees because Brian Cashman is heavily into the analytics. I mean, Joe Torre was more, why he had a conflict with Brian Cashman, because he was more into having a feel for the game the way the old timers do. Listen, I'm 100% for analytics. if there's enough evidence there. I don't want to hear that someone went 3 for 10 against a pitcher and the other guy went 1 for 10 and we're going on the analytics because he had a couple of more hits. If there's enough of a body of work
I'm not
and enough evidence there, yeah, you go on the analytics. But you also have to have a feel for the game, how the player is at that stage.
That's my point. Just because a guy's job is, and again, this isn't just Aaron Boone, and we won't get into this whole thing of what's wrong with baseball, but one big thing is nobody's got a feel for the game. Just because a guy pitched, his job is to pitch a 7th inning and not the 8th inning, we take him out, even though he might have struck out the side or got out on 3 pitches, 4 pitches, whatever. We just take him out because it's not his job to pitch the 8th inning. And I think that kind of, that trickles down. That's Brian Cashman's thinking. That's one of the reasons Aaron Boone was hired in the first place, because he thinks in lockstep with Brian Cashman.
Yeah, but no, well, there's certain moves that you make. Like, for example, if the Yankees blew the game in the 9th inning, okay, they have Devin Williams, their close in there. And if he blew the game, hypothetically, there'd be people out there saying Boone should get fired. I mean, but what other move can you make? You put in your closer. That's the only move to make. The players have to respond. You fill up the line. Is he filling the lineup card out the right way? Look, I criticized him about a week and a half ago, whatever. He gave Judge an off day when they played the Kansas City Royals.
I remember.
And I'm thinking, what the heck are you giving him an off day? Let him DH. He won't be playing the field. Let him DH 2 games in a row. If you want to pace Judge for the season, DH him 3 games in a row if you feel you have to give him a rest. And he gets his rest. How tired is he going to be DHing? And don't tell me, well, it's mental. You're getting mental rest as well. Judge is on the bench, antsy, wanting to get in there. And if you have him as a DH, it's fine. You're accommodating him. You're resting him.
I want to go back to, you're absolutely right, 100%. DH is kind of a day off, and Aaron Judge, by the way, they don't miss him that much defensively because Bellinger, whoever plays right field, is a pretty good defensive player. And I have to give some credit where credit is due. I've been very hard on Cashman as well as Boone. And you mentioned earlier the acquisitions of Bellinger and Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt, I would argue right now, or Bellinger might be the better player of the two at this point. Goldschmidt's playing really good defense and struggling a little bit with the bat, but still been a good acquisition. Bellinger is really starting to come along. He's had some big hits, and the way to stop getting Aaron Judge intentionally walked is for Bellinger to come through like he did a couple times recently. So look, the Yankees got some holes like everybody else. The starting pitching is going to be Swiss cheese from here on out, and fingers crossed, because there's not a lot to go out and get. And their third base situation is not going to go away either, because like you said, Peraza is a lights out fielder, but he can't.
Can you live with his bat? I want to say something about Carlos Mendoza, Met manager, former Yankee bench coach under Aaron Boone. He came under a lot of criticism, Keith, yesterday for pitching to Aaron Judge, and Aaron Judge hits a home run. And, I don't have a problem with it. Look, you got to pitch to these guys. You got to challenge them at times. And you're going to be so timid that you're never going to pitch to an elite hitter. And also, think of this statistic flat out. Baseball is a game of failure. If you pitch to Judge, how often is he going to hit a home run? Once every 11, 12 times he actually gets up? When you think of it percentage-wise, he just happened to hit one then. But, I understand there's certain situations you don't pitch to a guy. I can't say yesterday was one of them. But all the people that were criticizing him, the commentators, you hear about it on the Met Network. I heard their post-game show. Were they talking about it beforehand? That's when I want to hear. When he gets up to the plate, I want to hear them go out on the limb and say, they shouldn't be pitching to Aaron Judge. Tim McCarver years ago, he criticized Davey Johnson beforehand because Johnson put up a pinch hitter. at the end of the ninth inning, one of the Met games, the game was tied, and McCarver was beating it to death because Johnson had someone on the bench. I give McCarver a ton of credit, but you know what happened? The player hit a walk-off home run for the Mets, the guy Davey Johnson put in. But at least McCarver went out on the limb beforehand. And you don't get enough with these commentators. We hear after Judge hits the home run what a bad move it was, but we don't hear beforehand. They shouldn't be pitching to him. This is a mistake.
I try to be a first guesser when I can and not a second guesser. And I wonder if those guys were also deriding Brian Schneider for walking him 5 times intentionally with nobody on base, or putting the winning run at first base. And you can't have it both ways. So Sonia says you have a good point too, Jack. By the way,
well, she's put me down so much. She tries to throw me a bone every now and then.
We don't have a 2-hour show on Monday, so I can't spend a lot of time on all the comments. So you guys keep putting up. I'll post them and we'll comment where we can. I don't want to derail our show.
You don't have to put up all the comments, Keith. People want to have something on their mind, and you get to as much as you can. And
I'm not putting up all the hellos to each other. I can't,
Yeah, someone says hello, good morning. I'm in the middle of talking sometimes, and someone says good morning, guys, and you cut in and give them a good morning, Keith. We can't do that. We got to get on. We got to keep it rolling.
I just put them up and we move on. I do want to give a quick shout out to Bill O'Neill. I worked with Bill O'Neill about 25 years ago at DeCrescenti Distributors. Great guy. I know he's retired in Florida now. It's great to see you here, Bill. I hope you'll check out the show.
He sounds like a Red Sox fan.
Bill O'Neill. I think Bill's a Yankee fan. I'm not sure. Bill, if still out there, you can clarify that point for me. I'm not sure. I haven't seen him in like 20 some years. So anyway. Let's move on to the All-Star game. The All-Star rosters, full rosters, were announced yesterday. Soto left off. Mookie Betts left off. There's some debate. I had some debate on my show whether fans should vote, whether writers should vote, whether players should vote. I still think the fans should have the vote. It's their game. And they put Kershaw on his team. He doesn't deserve to be there based on the criteria that people want to take the vote away from the fans. My point is, this is the fans' game. And if a guy's having an off season and you want to see him play in this game and he's going to be competitive, then
you're wrong. Kershaw's having a good year. He hasn't pitched. He's like 4-0, and the ERA is respectable.
He's pitched 5 games or 6 games or something.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve on the quantity. What I think should be changed, Keith? Let me run this by you.
Let me just clarify. Yeah. I want Kershaw on this team. I'm okay watching guys near the end of their career and fans want to see them. No, the fans didn't pick him, but I want to see them play. Acuna's another guy who's played very few games, 30-some games, and he's in a starting lineup. Fans want to see him. I'm okay with that. Go ahead.
Keith, but if we're doing it on merit, per se. Okay, Bill. Yeah, my type of guy, then diehard Yankee fan. But if we're doing it on merit, this is how I think it should be done. Not the first couple of months of the season, that the first half. You're only making an all-star team over half a season. So you could have a down year, a bad second half, yet you're an all-star. I think it should be done over the full year, meaning let the year play out. At the end of the season, let the fans vote. And then for the following July, whoever was voted last year as an all-star makes the team. And the guys who get off to a great start this year are going to be all-stars next year. Okay, that's how I think it should be done over the course of a full year, not a partial year. We see this with Clay Holmes. He has a great couple of months, and he's always making all-star teams. Juan Soto being left out, Keith, that's kind of debatable. The case against Soto is this. He's new to the National League again, because he was an American Leaguer last year. But his numbers are not Juan Soto-like. They're a little disappointing for Juan Soto, but for anyone else, they're not bad numbers as far as making him an all-star.
Yeah, he sets the bar too high for himself. That's the problem for Juan Soto, as you're alluding to. What about every team having I think every team should be represented. Again, there's other people that don't. The Rockies had to be represented, and I think their catcher, I'm trying to think of their catcher's name, Goodman. I had it here a second ago. I think his name is Goodman. Do you think every team ought to be represented, even if they don't have a guy who's necessarily all-star worthy?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, listen, when the Mets were the laughable Mets as an expansion team, they had a pretty good second baseman, Ron Hunt, who would represent them.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're going to have some cases where you give waivers to icons of the game and let them, give them a pass into the All-Star game, there's a commissioner's exemption or something to make a guy an All-Star now. Yeah. I mean, each team should have like that one representative, I think.
What about, oh God, I'll go to this comment here. We're talking about Baez makes it, he was a Met disaster when they traded for him, and they traded another All-Star, Pete Crow Armstrong, who we were debating yesterday on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness whether that's one of the worst trades, Mets trades of all time. And it's too soon to say that because Armstrong hasn't had that long a career, but it doesn't match Ryan and for Fergosi or even Seaver being traded away.
Baez has made a comeback this year, but he hasn't been great. And I'm going to tell you who's an All-Star. Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres, who I did not want to see the Yankees move on from. I did not want to see that. You didn't like Gleyber Torres.
No.
But listen, he's doing a real nice job for the Tigers that he could have been doing with the Yankees.
We have no facts. We go down this road every single time, you and I. We have no facts that he would have been having this type of turnaround season in New York. I said all along he could probably rebound, but it would not be here.
Why not? Oh, don't tell me pressure in New York. He handled the pressure. He was an all-star with the Yankees. How many years? He was a proven player with the Yankees.
He hadn't had a good year in the
playoffs for the Yankees. He performed.
He hadn't had a good year in 5 years here. Since they tried to move him to shortstop, they screwed him up by trying to move him to shortstop in the COVID year. He went in the tank then, and his last really good year was 2019.
No, he had good years after that, too.
Yeah, okay.
He had his ups, he had his downs, but he wanted to be a Yankee. He loved being a Yankee.
That's great. I want to be a Yankee, too.
The Yankees would have been better off had he been with them this year.
I don't know who Zach McKinstry is, actually, Brian. Yeah, it's got to be a Tiger. I got to look at the Tiger. I'm sure Brian's talking about the Tigers here. So, what else?
Why are we putting up names who we don't know who the guy is?
My guess is that's a Tiger. That's why I put it up for B-lister. But I can't say
anything. To make it look bad here, because I'm talking. They got Baez, they got Gleyber Torres. The Tigers got a couple infielders in already.
I think it's going to be interesting too because you got some interesting names back. You got DeGrom back in the All-Star game, who's goes out there and will throw lights out for 1 inning.
He shouldn't be an All-Star, even though DeGrom is a future Hall of Famer in my view. It's going to be one. He shouldn't be an All-Star this year because he hasn't pitched really the last couple of years, and he's only had a couple of months in this season where he's been great. So now you're making him an all-star on
it's a fan
season.
Game. The fans want to see him play.
Well, the pitchers are usually picked by the managers.
I get it, but one of the reasons he's going to be picked is because the fans want to see him play. What you remember him pitching in I think it was his first All-Star game back in 2015 or 14, and he was just lights out for an inning, just out there throwing gas. Now he's had some arm problems. May not be the best thing for him to do, and who knows? We don't even know where they line up. He could not even get in the game based on if he pitched in recent days before that.
I'm going to tell you, lessons got to be learned by all teams. The best moves you can make are the ones that you don't. Stick with your players. Try to sign them when they're free agents. And if you give them the type of money another team would, you could be better off. Could you imagine the Mets decided, yeah, we're going to pay Jacob deGrom and we're going to pay Zach Wheeler, and they were on the Mets staff now? You mean to tell me if the Mets couldn't get them at that price now, they wouldn't pay it, knowing Steve Cohen, even though I can understand DeGrom's issue was injury concerns, and that's exactly what played out. But Texas won the world. Texas won the World Series with DeGrom on the shelf, basically.
Exactly.
But now the way DeGrom is pitching, maybe when all is said and done, Texas might get value on that contract, even though I doubt it. $185 million. Look at the way Texas is now, the way they're going. They're not going to be a wild card even.
He's already on a third year, that 5-year contract.
And they didn't get, even though they won the World Series, they did it without him. So that hasn't been a good contract for Texas. And look, if DeGrom could keep pitching like this till the end of the contract, they can at least maybe justify it. And who knows what the team will do going forward.
Can we reasonably think that DeGrom's not going to get hurt sometime in the next 3 years? I don't think we can even make that assumption. I mean, he's going to. And I would argue, well, he not only didn't contribute to that World Series championship, he also has hurt them the last 2 years because that contract is now an albatross around their neck. He could, if he pitches, then that's fine. But it's hurt them elsewhere in this organization because this isn't the Yankees or the Mets. They don't have that kind of money to just,
Well, they must feel it. Look, if he gives them value and he continues to pitch the way he is, obviously it's worth it to them. Why else would they have paid him? But then again, they paid A-Rod all that money, and A-Rod was an MVP in Texas, and then they had to get rid of him because of financial considerations on the contract. You wonder why these teams are giving all this money if they can't afford to do it. Like, you think of the San Diego Padres, you wonder at the end of this season, are they going to go into a rebuild finally? They're paying Manny Machado all that money, Fernando Tatis, etc. And they cooled it a little in the offseason, the Padres. They were a little less aggressive than they were, the few years before.
Well, these guys can't all spend like drunken sailors. Billy O'Neill, I think, is referring to Gleyber Torres when he says lazy as Cano. Lazy might be too hard, but Gleyber was a guy who did not play good fundamental baseball. Not on defense, not on the bases. He could hit the ball now and again when he wasn't in a slump, but fundamentally, very flawed player. Very.
Sometimes you wonder, is it worth it, the extra money? Look, Bill mentions Robinson Cano when he says lazy.
Yep.
Cano was offered, when he was a free agent, a 7-year deal from the Yankees worth $175 million, $25 million a year, okay? But Seattle came in with a 10-year deal, $240 million. He took the deal. I think Jay-Z was his agent. He took the deal with Seattle for the $240 million for the extra $65 million. Now, if you play 7 years for the Yankees and you continue to play after that, you can make up some of that $65 million. But let's say Cano would have played the 7 years with the Yankees. He would have played out the contract. Then let's say he would have been just so and made $15 million more and lost $50 million. Now think of it. Is it worth that extra money to have a lost legacy? He has no legacy. He would have been in Monument Park, but then again, he was caught with the steroids and suspended.
Well,
who knows how tarnished he would have been. But had Cano put together 5 really top years with the Yankees, we might be talking Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
at least he would have been in Monument Park, I think.
Well, the Yankees could have matched, and they decided to sign the stiff from Boston instead with the money. So that didn't work out very well for the Yankees either.
No, they made the deal with Cano. No, the Yankees wanted Cano, made him a good offer. Since we're on the Monument Park, you and I haven't talked about it enough. We just got to make a mention. What is wrong with the Yankees? The way they disrespect the legacies of the late '70s teams, the past teams. Roy White, 15 years, non-Monument Park.
100%.
Greg Nettles, not in Monument Park. Come on. What's with them? I don't get this.
I would argue both of those guys belong there before Reggie, who spent 5 years here.
I'm going to go a step further. Willie Randolph is in Monument Park, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Who was a greater Yankee player, Greg Nettles or Willie Randolph?
Well, Willie was steady, but Nettles was a better player for sure.
Nettles
never gets his due. Never.
If I'm listing, Keith, if I'm going to list down the 3 greatest defensive third basemen in the history of baseball, okay, and let's say I say this: Brooks Robinson 1, Nettles 2. Find me a other third baseman who you could confidently say is better than Nettles. You could say, oh, well, they had Clete Boyer. I can't say he was better than Nettles. You could say he was as good. But the point is, Nettles is on the short list of the greatest defensive third baseman in history. And he also led the league in homers. So Roy White, 15 years a Yankee.
Yep.
15 years a Yankee in left field, and he can't be put in Monument Park. Come on.
Jack, they spent 10 of those 15 years trying to replace him. They didn't respect him even then. For years they tried to replace Roy White, and he'd always win his job back. He was a very consistent, underrated player for sure, and would take some shots. Just real quick, finish up this All-Star chat. Danny's talking about Pages, the Dodger outfielder who's been their most consistent player, should have been an all-star team. We got to drop somebody, though. We can't just add guys without dropping guys. We got to remember, too. Not sure what that's from Brian.
I don't want to listen. I like an all-star to be an established player. If it's a rookie phenom, for example, I don't like rookies in the all-star game because I like a player to have played one full year, unless it's a phenom like a Vida Blue was. The guy, is an absolute sensation. Yeah. You could put him, maybe in the all-star game, give him a waiver as far as that goes.
Yeah, Michael Gott, our number one UK fan over there in England, across the pond. We talked about the voting changes. He brings up the fact that should it continue to be the AL versus the NL. When there was no interleague play, this would be a no-brainer to me. You'd continue to play AL against NL. But now that there's interleague play, maybe we look at a different format. Maybe it should be the U.S. against the world. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I don't think you're going to build any interest in the game no matter what you do. I just don't think you will. And unless there's certain matchups, if you have Ohtani pitching, you want to see him maybe pitch against the All-Stars. You want to see Aaron Judge with a bat in his hand. But I don't think on balance. The game doesn't mean anything to the players unless everyone on the winning team gets $1 million. Everyone on the losing team gets nothing, not a penny, not a penny. Then there's intensity. The teams want to win. And I'm interested in watching the game because I'm interested in seeing them go for the $1 million because I know how bad they want to play. And also the managers, the moves they would make would reflect that. They wouldn't necessarily play every player, okay, if $1 million was on the line.
I'm okay with
some players care about playing, some players don't. Going back into the past when Rod Carew was an all-star, he complained one year. He said, look, I didn't come here to just play 3 innings. I want to play. Some players are okay with playing a couple of innings and chilling out, but some players really want to play the whole game, and that's nice to see.
Well, P. Rose would go.
Rick's point. Yeah, we should get on Rick's point. Yeah, Rick, we never do it. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, we'll segue off of that into this because I did want to talk about the Nationals firing Dave Martinez and Rizzo, the last couple of days. They won a World Series 6.5 years ago, and ever since then, they did tear the team down quite a bit, obviously, but they haven't even been close to having a winning record since they won this World Series. And that World Series was kind of what you talk about, Jack. This team was not very good for most of that year. If you remember, they got hot for 2 months, made it to the playoffs, and just ran roughshod over everybody in the playoffs. Fair?
Rizzo is a well-respected GM. He's going to get a job elsewhere. Whether Dave Martinez will, it's questionable because organizations should try to get a manager from within, unless it's a really big name, famous manager along the lines of a Tony La Russa, Sparky Anderson, these iconic names. Then they're going to kind of reach out. But, the Nationals have been a disappointment. There's no way of getting around it. They were supposed to be better this year, and they haven't. And winning a World Series, how much goodwill does it get you, and how much goodwill should it get you? How many years grace should it get you? You mentioned 6.5 years. 6.5 years, you're trending into territory where you're becoming far removed from winning the World Series. So I don't think that carries that. It doesn't give you a gold card anymore.
No.
You win the World Series, you should have a gold card for 3-4 years maybe. But once you get to 6.5 years, I don't like firing managers in season or GMs in season unless there's so much turmoil. I'd rather play the year out unless you're bringing in a manager who's going to be with you long term and you want him to learn the personnel going forward. Then I could understand it. But just have an interim manager because you're fed up with the losing, I don't go for that.
Yeah, to Chris's point about the Orioles and Dave Martinez, I'm not sure Dave Martinez will get another shot.
Bring the Nationals back to life, Chris. What makes you think the Orioles?
Yeah,
Orioles just fired their manager.
They did fire their manager back
in. I got fired.
I got fired
not that long ago. And listen, the Yankees will bring the Orioles back to life if they keep losing. The AL East could bring them back. They're 11 games out, I think, the Orioles. They can still make a move, but they've got to, put together a couple of streaks.
This was my World Series opponent against the Dodgers was the Orioles. So
I'm not completely cutting them out, but listen, they lost players. They lost Corbin Burns, who would have been their ace, Anthony Santana, really good outfielder for them.
Yeah,
I didn't think they were going to, be a force this year. I thought they'd maybe have a winning record, but that would be about it.
Just back to Martinez for a second. He's not going to get another job, I don't think, because the teams he's had, and again, personnel matters. I get it, but his teams have been so bad since that World Series victory. They haven't even been close to 500 in 6+ years.
It's about relationships. If GMs know people from long ago, they're comfortable with them. It increases their chances of being brought back. It's kind of about relationships going around the league. We don't know how that plays off, who's close to who. Some GMs want a manager they can control, who they know is going to be 100% cooperative with them and won't push back. It depends. But I'll say this, Rizzo is a good GM. He's going to get a job, as a GM a lot sooner than Martinez, I think, will as a manager. But who knows? 100%.
A lot of third base comments still there. Got some agreement on Nettles. Schmidt, Brett gets brought up a couple of times. Billy O'Neill mentions Aurelio Rodriguez. He was a great defensive player, but he couldn't hit a lick, by the way.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, what else we got to chat about here today? We had
Danny Fuller's from LA, right? You got LeBron. He's got to be.
Let's throw LeBron.
Big talk in. He's always worth the conversation.
Probably deserves more than 5 minutes, but LeBron did exercise his option for $52 million from the Lakers this year. And the question is he actually going to get paid that money from the Lakers, or are they going to move him? He was seen recently at the Cleveland practice facility, which raised a lot of eyebrows and chatter. I don't know if it means anything. There are some teams out there that I'm sure would bring LeBron on and think he's going to be the final piece. He's obviously, what's he going to be, 40 years old next year? I'm not even sure. Will he be 40?
He's an elite player still.
No,
he's an elite player still. LeBron can still play a few more years. Because he's smart. He could be a point guard. He could bring the ball down. I mean, he's a good ball handler. Great all-around player. Him being at the Cleveland facility, he says that's his hometown. That's where he works out. I thought he moved to L.A. I mean, I don't get it. What the heck was he doing in Cleveland, working out at the facility? He's denying everything, but what else is he going to say? And reportedly the Cavaliers are not that interested, and that might, and I don't know their head coach Kenny Atkinson's feelings on LeBron. He might be thinking to himself, LeBron's a coach killer. We have a good team as it is. I don't need the drama that he could be bringing, perhaps. I don't know. But I will say this, LeBron, if LA doesn't show signs that they could win the championship this year, and LeBron plans to play past this year, he's going to want out. My guess is this is his last year with the Lakers, if I had to predict.
If he makes it through this year, I still think there's other options for the Lakers if they want to pursue them. I see two really interesting, and whether you like LeBron or not, I know Danny's not a big LeBron fan. Rick isn't. We all get on LeBron. He's one of the best top 3 players of all time, whether you like him or you don't like him. You can't argue that fact. I see 2 intriguing spots for LeBron. One is Golden State. He enjoyed playing with Steph Curry in the Olympics. I think that's an interest, and playing for Steve Kerr. And maybe even San Antonio would be an interesting place for LeBron to land. I don't think they want to spend that kind of money on one guy, though. But
San Antonio. I never thought that would have been perfect, ideal when Coach Pop was there.
Yeah.
Because Coach Pop, he really likes LeBron a lot, and LeBron likes Coach Pop a lot. And Coach Pop has such status, LeBron would know his place. And he wouldn't want to question Coach Pop. And when Wembanyama about to turn into one of the greatest players in NBA history, which he'll ultimately be, and not about to do it next season, of course, but he's going to be one of the greatest players, drafting Dylan Harper, the other young players that they have. It would have been a great spot for him, San Antonio. At Golden State, it's like the over the hill gang, even though Steph Curry's not over the hill. Jimmy Butler, he's not quite the same player he was, even though he can resemble the same player. Draymond Green, not the same player, even though he could resemble the same player. I don't know. There's a lot of drama there. But he's going to be with the Lakers this year. They're not trading him before the season, at least. Maybe during the season. But LA is going to want something in return. What can the team afford to give in return? I don't know. You're
not paying much for LeBron at this point when you got to take on a $52 million contract. I mean, he'll get something, but he's not going to get the Kevin Durant haul even, and he's an old timer too. Before we wrap up, I want to let Michael Gott get a question here because you're going to get some boxing questions apparently from Michael Gott.
Yeah, you got to give me time to answer. Ricky Hatton didn't have anything when he last fought at age 46. It's delusional. Hatton has a tendency to put on a lot of weight. He gets hit a lot. This Michael, and I'm going to say very quickly because we don't have much time. If you look at the way all the great fighters in boxing history have turned out, it's been bad for them. The amount that have dementia, issues later on in life, because they have these extra fights at the end of their career, these needless fights. Hatton makes a comeback. He's going to get hit a lot in the comeback. In the gym, if he spars enough, certainly when he fights again, it's ill-fated. And, at age 46. But look, Manny Pacquiao, same age. And he's going to be fighting in a couple of weeks against Mary Barrios. I hate the idea of Hatton returning to the ring.
Great point. Good question. Good question, Michael, and a good answer from Jack. He's going to get some boxing questions we can see on this show.
You got to give me a little more time. I mean,
that came up late. That came up late, so that's fine. Yeah. But Good show. Good job, Jack. Guys, thanks for your and listen, you guys leave the comments on all my shows. You're bringing it to this show. I try to get to them. With two of us here, it's a little harder than when it's just me. So bear with us. And the ones that I think are relevant, don't take offense to when I don't put them up, guys. We're all adults here. So anyway, I thank everybody. Jack, I thank you. We'll be back on Friday at 8 a.m. To look at next weekend stuff and the stuff that's happened through this week, obviously. And I'll be back on, I guess I don't have anything.
Well, we do the show. We're bookends. We're Friday and Monday. We do the show. You and I together. We talk about all the action going into the weekend and after the weekend.
Thank you, Danny. We start the Monday great.
Hey, Danny.
That's what we want to hear. So great stuff. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back on Friday. Have a great, great day. Bye-bye.